So Kumiko woodworking, you guys have learned about this and you know that it is a ancient Japanese technique. Only the most masterful of woodworkers could ever accomplish something like this. And we are going to totally cheat the system and use a laser cutter to replicate this type of pattern. What we're going to do, we're going to hop right into Adobe Illustrator to create our design. So let's go through this process. First things first, I'm going to select new file. Now our default is almost always 24 by 12. That's most of our sheet goods, but this time around I'm actually going to switch it up a little bit. We're using some smaller sheet goods for this, and those sheet goods actually are 8 by 12. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over and I'm going to make this 8 by 12. Okay, you can do it landscape, so a width of 12 and height by 8. It depends on the design that you want, but I'm going to keep mine portrait. Okay, I'm also going to call this design. Okay, and add my last name. And it's going to be critically important that we switch over from CMYK to RGB. Make sure it's absolutely RGB. So after all that, I'm going to select create. Okay, and here's my template. Here's my workspace that I have to work with. Now the first thing I want to do is I'm going to draw some rulers here. So I went ahead and turned that on. Go ahead and pause, make sure that your arrangement looks like mine. Also, absolutely make sure that we are working in inches, okay, displayed in inches. And let's set up some margins. Essentially what we want is at least ½ an inch all the way around to make sure that when we cut all this down and everything, we got kind of this ½ inch margin to work with. And it may not make sense now, but just trust me on this process, and we'll get that there. So what I'm doing is I'm just clicking up in this ruler space, and I'm snapping all the way around to the outer portions of my document. Okay, and I'm going to bring this down ½ an inch. It doesn't have to be perfect, but you can see I'm at 0.49. There we go. So I'm going to move all of these in 1/2 of an inch. And again, I'm going to do my best to make it perfect, but you know, close enough. You can see that it's actually, you can see I'm at 0.32, 0.4, so you can actually track and measure it that way. So here we go, 1/4 inch, 0.43, 0.49, 0.5. There we go. So now I've got this ½ inch margin all the way around. Okay, wonderful. Okay, so I've got all this. Let's take a moment to save this. Okay, we're gonna save this. I'm gonna be lazy. I'm gonna put it on my desktop. Don't follow what I do. Make sure it's saved in your student storage folder. So I'm gonna save that, and I'm gonna select yes to all that. Okay. Okay, so I can save as needed. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to, you know, we're quite literally stealing these ideas from this website. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go find a pattern that I like, and I think I was going to go with this one for example purposes. So I'm going to save this image onto my computer, and I'm just going to put it in the downloads folder. Okay, let's minimize that. I'm going to come up here to File, Place. Okay, so that is the terminology that Adobe Illustrator uses for inserting an image. So I'm going to place an image, and I'm going to go find that, and here it is. Okay, there it is. So obviously this is quite large, but that's okay. That works out pretty well. Because I can scale it down after the fact, okay? So my next step is to start tracing this. Now the way Kumiko works is that you cut these thin strips and glue them into place but we're actually going to be doing the opposite. For laser cutting, we're actually going to be tracing and cutting out these negative spaces, okay? So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come right up here and lock this selection. Now I don't have to worry about kind of accidentally resizing this or anything like that. So I'm going to demonstrate this, but in no ways am I going to make this perfect for this screencast. I'm just going to show you kind of the rough concept of how it works, and you know, if I were to actually move this to a laser cutter, I would definitely refine this much more. But anyway, let's go ahead and get started. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this pattern right here, but right now I'm only going to focus on this top corner. Okay, you can see that it's kind of split into 4 quarters here. So I'm going to create these shapes and then duplicate them multiple times. Okay, so let's start with the easy ones. I'm going to start with a square right up here. Okay, there we are. Stroke, let's give it a black stroke for now, just so we can kind of see what we're doing. Okay, and there's another one. As a matter of fact, let's not do that. Let's Control Z that. What I can do now is I'm going to hold down Alt on my keyboard and click and drag, and that will duplicate this item. Okay, so there we go. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my rectangle tool again. I'm going to come right up here. And let's do this. There we are. Okay, now there are a couple different ways that you can create this shape. I think my first method, I'm going to use my direct selection tool. And I'm going to click on this point right here and drag that down to right about there. Looks like we should be right about there. Okay. Now let's add another anchor point. So I'm going to use my pen tool, and I'm just going to click and add an anchor point. And I'm going to go back to my direct selection tool. And let's see here. Let's get this one a little bit more aligned. I think you get the point. There we go. Let's see if I can make that more of a 90. Okay, and there's that shape. Okay, now I'm going to hold down Alt, click and drag. Now I can use these rotate options right up here. So I'm going to flip this horizontally and then flip that vertically and then horizontally. There we are. And now I can click and drag, and now I've got these two shapes, this corner pretty much done. Okay. Now if I were to zoom out a little bit, I could take all these shapes right here, using just my regular selection tool, and I'm going to group those for right now. So now all I have to do is take this and click and drag. Let's flip this vertically. Okay, and I'm going to use my snap options to make sure that it's all aligned and all that. Okay, good. Alt and drag. I'm going to flip it horizontally. Good. And again, I'm going to use my alignment tools as much as possible, but I'm kind of moving pretty quickly to get that done here. And I'm going to go flip horizontally, and there we are. So at this point, I'm ready to come right back up here to Object and Unlock. Okay. So I can select this image, move it out of the way, and you can see all that's left are my original patterns. Okay. And let's go ahead and do this. Let's group these items. Be very careful that you don't accidentally group your guide lines as well. We could do this actually. Let's go ahead and lock those guides. So now you actually can't move them anyway. So there we go. So we got this. Now what I can begin doing is scaling this down, okay? And you can see that if I were to do a better job of scaling this, first off, as you scale, hold down the shift button so that way it scales in proportion. If you don't, you could end up kind of skewing it. That might work for you actually, depending on what you're trying to make, but you probably want to scale it proportionally. Okay, so there we are. Now here's one of the things that you're going to see here is that, you know, I didn't really scale it correctly. So what I could do is maybe scale it up a little bit more. And let's get rid of this one. And instead of trying to scale them both, you know, just a little bit bigger. Okay, I'm just going to scale one and then duplicate it. Okay, so you can see that I didn't do a very good job. I got kind of this odd margin right here. But what I can do is, what I can do is first align these so that they are centered, and then I can move these, you know, into the center. Maybe my pattern I move a little bit further towards the center margins and things like that. But then from there, I would just do the same thing and group all of that. Forgive me, let's do this first. Let's group this. Okay, so now I've got the entire thing grouped, and then I can do another one, and another one, okay, and another one. All right, now I can use my alignment tools. Let me zoom out a little bit for you. So I can use my alignment tools to make sure that we are equally spaced. So distribute spacing, and I'm going to make sure that this all together, let's just group this whole thing one last time, and I'm going to align it to the artboard, just like so. All right, and you know, for our purposes right now, we're going to call that good enough. I don't know if I'm perfectly square and all of those things, but for our screencast, I'm going to call this good. You can kind of see how the pattern takes shape. All right. Now, one last thing before we go, we are cutting this on the laser cutter, and you haven't done this a whole lot quite yet. So what we need to do is change our stroke, the outline. Okay, the way this works, to cut on a laser cutter, it must be red 255, green, so RGB, red, green, blue. Red is 255, green is 0, blue is 0, so that is pure red, okay? The other thing that we need to do is go 0.001. We want this to be razor thin, and the last thing we want to do is click and make sure that it is align stroke to center, okay? And that is what we should end up with, okay? Something that looks like this. Now when we send this to the laser cutter, it will cut through that balsa wood, all right? One last thing to do before we go. Let's click on our little expansion tool right here, and we're gonna go to our measure tool and go click around. Let's get in nice and close and make sure that any lines that we draw, okay, are at least 1/16 of an inch. So 1/16 of an inch is 0.0625. So anything above that 0.0625 is safe. It should you should be able to laser cut that without it being an issue. Okay, so 0.0625. Make sure that nothing's too close, otherwise it'll burn and probably not stay intact. Okay, and good luck. Start designing some beautiful Kumiko artwork.